gentlemen, distinguished guests. Can everyone hear me? Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. On behalf of the National Commission for Museums and Monuments and Coronation Group, it gives me great honor to welcome you to Building a Nation, Enwonwu and the Impact of Sculpture. As a child, Enwonwu was captivated by the figures carved by his father at a shrine in Onitsha. Indeed, these figures inspired, but they also frightened him. It was not until his father's passing that Ben began to delve deeper into art, perhaps in an attempt to connect once again with his father. From the stained windows of cathedrals to carvings in ancestral shrines, there has always been a convergence between art and spirituality. Art attempts to express the deepest aspects of what it means to be human, and spirituality also seeks to do the same. Ben began to perfect his art, and the rest, as they say, is history. Here we are, many years later, gathered today to honor his greatness and appreciate the intricacy of his work. Before I proceed, I must take this opportunity to express my profound gratitude to Coronation Group for sponsoring today's event, and especially to Mr. I. Gimokwede for his invaluable support. I would also like to thank Bonhams and the entire team that have worked tirelessly to put this event together. So, let's talk about the past. What is the past, and why is it so important? I believe the bricks we use to build the future often come from the past. The past is a repository of our shared human experience and serves as a guidebook for understanding who we are. In the old days, ships navigating the seas at night would rely on the North Star to find their way and stay true to their course. And so, in this same way, the past serves as our North Star as we navigate the seas of life. The past is an embodiment of our heritage, the stories passed down from father to son, from mother to daughter. These stories are told under the moonlight, passing down codified messages of our identity as a people to generations to come. Now, I invite you to travel back in time. The year is 1956, and Enwonwu has just been commissioned to sculpt the Queen. This is the same year the Queen will visit Nigeria for the first time. Also, in 1956, the sculpture of Enwonwu that welcomed you at the entrance of the museum was completed. A year later, in 1957, Kenneth Murray, the first director of antiquities and one of the founding fathers of the NCMM, opened the doors of this same museum. And the Nigerian House of Representatives passed a motion requesting independence from Great Britain. And in the same year, the bronze statue of this queen was unveiled. 3 years later, in 1960, Nigeria would gain her independence. And not too far from here, behind us, at TBS, the Union Jack was lowered for the last time, and the Nigerian flag was hoisted. So, I ask again, why are we here? We are here today to pay homage to the past. Not just our colonial legacy or our fight for independence, but also the spirit of self-determination that was burning across our continent at the time. I am not sure it is possible to speak of a renewed hope agenda without alluding to renewed heritage first. Hope looks at the future, but first must be anchored in an appreciation of the past. The Federal Ministry of Arts, Culture and Tourism, under the leadership of our very capable minister, is steadfastly committed to ushering in what we call the Nigerian Cultural Renaissance. I'd like to recognize the cooperation of the National Gallery of Art and thank Mr. Ahmed Sodangi for loaning us a magnificent wooden sculpture by Enwonwu. You'll see this once the exhibition opens. You are all here, witnesses to history. And in many years from now, when images of this same event are in this museum, your story will be part of a bigger one. A bright story that will show the world that Nigeria, and indeed the black race, has so much to offer humanity. Every nation has its past, but woe unto that nation whose past has been left to decay. These words were spoken by Enwonwu in 1948, and today, almost a century later, these words still ring true. The National Commission for Museums and Monuments remains committed to ensuring that our past is not left to decay, and I invite you all to join us on this epic journey. Thank you for coming today. Do enjoy the rest of your evening, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
I think you can be a little more generous with your applause for that very wonderful speech. Right about now, I'd like to welcome someone who's made it his sole purpose to make all of us at Coronation lovers of people, art, and wealth. He's none other but the chairman of Coronation Group, Mr. Aiboje Ike Imokwede, for his remarks. Please come. A round of applause for him, please.
Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, very beautiful people. Common to, I believe, everybody here is a serious art-loving nature, culture-loving life, and really enlightened type of thought. My name is Aiboje Ike Imokwede. I started coming to this very, should I call it a quadrangle almost, when I was 4 years old, when my mother worked here as the curator of this museum. I think probably the strongest thing that Africa has given to the world is art and culture. And I remember debates and listening to debates in this very museum then about who inspired who, Picasso or Enwonwu. The debate is still on now in many respects. Enwonwu and several other prominent masters, we have still some alive with us, but most have passed, men and women, were my uncles and aunties when I grew up. So aside from, of course, being, let's just say, an African and therefore allied and affiliated to art in its every form, whether dancing, whether thinking, whether pursuing, and so on, my understanding and belief in excellence actually was revealed in art. Not in banking, not in finance, not in science, not in technology, but art. And I kind of bring everybody back to this defining question. When you labor in whatever form and you succeed, financially or otherwise, how do you express your success? 99% of the time, it's going to be expressed in trying to own a bit of what probably you cannot create. That is art. Whether it's in the form of architecture, whether it's in the form of a sculpture, whether it's in the form of music, whatever it is, art is actually the ultimate expression of success. And I think that in Africa, certainly in Nigeria, we need to reconnect ourselves to this way of thinking, to this understanding that if we indeed lose our art, if we lose our culture, our ultimate expression of success will come from somebody else, somewhere else. And indeed, we may risk becoming somebody else, somewhere, or someone else. A few years ago, I was speaking at the Tate in London, and I was asked the question, what is it about the Enwonwu that makes you behave like somebody who loses himself as a collective? And I realized then that from the age of 4 to the age of 10, almost every other day after school, myself and my siblings, the ones that were old enough at that time, would come to join our mom here. And as you drive in, you will notice that Anyawu that Bile Holloway spoke about. Look at that piece of work. Look at the beauty of that work. And imagine that as a child, every other day, that defined your understanding of art. And so now, just as I was influenced, and several of you here, influenced by virtue of the fact that either as an Akirele, your parents brought you here, or as a Peterside in King's College, you strolled over here, and you can see the effect of those experiences living through generations today. We need to give our children and our children's children that experience that we lived in. So we shall preserve this museum. We shall preserve and support the work of Bile and other leaders in the arts and culture sector working for government. We shall do it the way every other nation does it, because government is never going to be enough, where people like you and I will step forward as individuals and institutions and do what must be done to preserve our arts and culture. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I hope that Bile is the DG when we invite everybody back here to see the fruit of his labor and see this and many other things transformed, and your storage areas and every other thing that must be done.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm not interfering with the selfie taking. I'd like to thank the Director General of the NCMM for his kind introduction earlier, and also for putting me on this stage in front of 200 pairs of eyes and ears in order to try to explain why this wonderful sculpture by the great Professor Enwonwu may not quite be the image of British colonial representation that it appears to be. But I'll get to that. I'd also like to thank Mr. Akboje Mekwede and the Coronation Group for all their support. We certainly wouldn't be here this evening without them. And also to all the collectors who lent works for the show. My talk this evening is about three main themes: the museum, Enwonwu, and the statue of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. There is a lot to talk about, but I've been told that my 40-minute lecture is now a 10-minute speech. All right, Billy? Good. 10 minutes if I talk fast. Okay. So why me? My name is Neil Coventry, and I'm here representing Bonhams this evening. Although I have a more personal link with this museum, like many of you here. My first encounter with Enwonwu's art was with this very same Anyawu on the facade of the building. I came to the museum when I was, I think, 15 or 16 years old to do a school project on carving, when there used to be a resident carver over here. And here I am 35 years later, it feels like still working on the same project. I've gathered some research, some letters, some photographs, paintings, press, and some sculptures in the main gallery. This shows only a snapshot of Enwonwu's career, but I hope it provides some additional context for all of you here. In our discussion today, you won't hear much from me. Instead, you'll be hearing from Enwonwu himself. His voice, which we will hear through his diaries, articles, and letters helps us see why this museum and this sculpture are emblems of Nigerian culture. Enwonwu pushes us to understand the power of art to shape national identity as it unites the masterpieces of the past with the practice of this celebrated modernist Nigerian sculptor. Enwonwu was a great supporter of the 1943 museum, writing in that same year, "It is certainly an excellent proposition and it will usher in new interests for the arts in this country." It was not an easy task, but thanks in no small part to Ben Enwonwu, here we stand 80 years after his first Lagos exhibition, and I'm happy to share that we have a sculpture in ebony from 1935 that was exhibited in that very first exhibition. It is noteworthy that Enwonwu also had one of his last exhibitions here in 1991. So not only was Enwonwu integral in the founding of this museum, but it was in 1943 show where Enwonwu would get the final push he needed to go to study at the Slade School of Art in London. He said, "I have not painted pictures in my life. I have only been playing with the brushes. I am a flame, but my wings are wet. Give me the chance to see England, leave me to soar, and I will make history. I will show out the spirit of my father, an African." The title of this exhibition is Building a Nation, Ben Enwonwu and the Impact of Sculpture. There is so much to say, and I've already used up many of my minutes. The history and impact of sculpture in Nigeria is vast and deep. It would be impossible to convey even a fraction of this in the few minutes we have, so I'll stick to the rest of my script. The impact of sculpture in Nigeria's national identity is of course not limited to the works of Ben Enwonwu alone, but to the works of antiquity housed in this very establishment. The Benin bronzes, the works of Ife, the Nok terracottas, the list is long. A journalist wrote of Enwonwu's work in 1950. Some of Enwonwu's carvings are strictly traditional and could, to all but the expert eye, take their place comfortably among the Benin bronzes. Hopefully we'll see that today. This shows us just how important art, and in particular sculpture, have been to Nigeria for centuries. Sculpture is the connective thread running through Nigerian history, from the Nok sculptures to Enwonwu's 1956 Anyanwu on the facade here. Enwonwu himself was a great believer in this. He wrote, "I think that art should speak of an age of its country. My aim, therefore, is to speak through my art, so that a robust accentuation of form should still, as in the past, be the feature of Nigerian national art." Enwonwu wrote these words in 1942, 82 years ago, and 15 years before the museum opened its doors for the first time. Enwonwu also said, "Modern Nigerian art must grow from the old art because it was a most sincere form of art. Art in Nigeria cannot be expected to survive if it tends to grow from European art." And that leads me to speak about the sculpture that we're all here to look at today. Enwonwu wrote, "Without the Queen's encouragement, I would have given up almost as soon as I started. But she put me at ease and was a wonderfully patient subject." Very interesting use of the word subject, in my opinion. The sculpture is on display for the first time in the museum since it was taken down from outside the House of Representatives in Lagos and put into protective storage after it was vandalized during the 1978 student riots. I don't know exactly when the statue was taken down, but perhaps someone here can shed some light on that.
We sure hope you enjoyed this video. For more entertaining video content such as behind the scenes of music videos and movies, music concerts, premieres, interviews, and exclusive gists, subscribe now to our YouTube channel GoldmyneTV and be unleashed into a world of super excitement.